Leila, sup?
What's up?
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. You are a fucking badass. And I want to let you know that directly. And I've been waiting to tell you that because my team is addicted to you now, because I just have started this Instagram meme chat, and it's either just VC memes or it's Leila Hormozi videos of telling them, okay, hey, and I usually send them as apologies, because I say, hey, I said something a really messed up way the other day, and here's Leila to apologize for me.
Oh my God.
I've learned my lessons. Yeah. So
thank you for that. That's really cool.
So I went to one of y'all's original inaugural workshops. So you guys are doing workshops at Acquisition headquarters now here in Vegas, where we're recording this. Talk to us a little bit about your decision to start doing this in-person event, because I was at y'all's third one and it was freaking sick.
That's cool. It was honestly just we spent a lot of time trying to figure out the portfolio. So that was a good 3 years of acquisition.com. And, prior to even launching it publicly, doing it privately in the background while we were selling our other businesses. But what I've always had for acquisition.com is really like a triangle, right? And so it's at the top, we have a portfolio, and then we knew at the bottom, we have books and free content, but what is in the middle is what has always been undetermined. And so when it got to a point where, we're getting 45,000 business owners a month who say, I want to be in the portfolio, and we're like, that's not exactly a good model for us, unless I just want to break all of everything in my life. It just kept eating away at me of what do we do about that? Because I've asked people, I talk to people, and I'm like, well, what do you want? They're like, some more than the content, right? And once we were at a point where we figured out what our portfolio was going to look like, and we got all the trains running on time over there, and then I realized that we had excess capacity to look at what else that we should do to create a flywheel in acquisition.com. I didn't want to create anything that was what other people were doing. And I asked myself, what is something where have I gotten the most growth and value as an entrepreneur? And all of the things have been in-person experiences, proximity to people that I want to be and very a little bit more intimate of events, not like a mega 2,000 person event. I've always been okay, cool, rah rah, here we are. But
Tony Robbins,
smaller, smaller, more intimate settings. And so I said, I really think that we should do this. And I don't think at the time everyone was on board with it, because it sounded hard and not scalable. But I think that most of the best ideas that you have in business are the ones that aren't scalable, and the ones that seem hard, and it's the work that nobody else wants to do. And we had just gotten this headquarters for acquisition.com, about 6 months prior. And so I was like, well, now it makes sense, because we have a lot of excess space as well as excess capacity in terms of what we can do as a team, because we've gained a lot of efficiency. And so, I just said fuck it, let's just put one together 3 months out from now, and let's see if people want it. I don't know. And all these things make me nervous, by the way, because it's very difficult to test things when you have such an audience and a brand. It's almost everyone's always watching every little thing.
Don't want to break the brand.
Yeah. And to be fair, I think my brand, I'm very honest. So it's if something broke, I have no problem being I fucked up and made a mistake. But I still feel a sense of people are watching, right? And so, we did the first one, and people were like, holy crap, I want to come back. And I was like, doesn't make sense to come back to the same one. And so I said, what I had said, and I set out the goal was, I said, I want to do 4, and I want to see what we think after we've done 4. And after we did 4, we were like, we should keep doing this, because we realized all the benefits of doing it. In terms of, one, a benefit that many people may not know, but all these people that have been working in our portfolio, we taught them how to present. And so, we went and took them to trainings, we invested in skills, we paid people to help them, coach them on speaking. We put together a whole speaker training cadence. And that actually had a great transfer of their ability to talk to portfolio CEOs and founders had increased. And so it's something, you do it, you're good at it, but once you have to teach it, you become an expert. And so it's been really cool to see how their skill sets have just continued to compound, really, really, really cool. Second thing is that tons of people that come here, have expressed interest in wanting to be invested in by acquisition.com. And so hearing what types of businesses and what they would want in a partnership has been really great information for me to figure out, okay, with the portfolio and where it's going, what does that look like for us, and what opportunities are there that I didn't know about? And then ancillary benefits of, we use the excess space and time that we have, we get content when we do it. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And so it's been cool. It's just trying to figure out how to capitalize on all the demand and all the areas of our business without letting anything break has been the conundrum of 2024.
Yeah, I was at the third one, so I'm glad you continued them after mine. Otherwise, that would have been awkward to do this now and talk about it.
Yeah, it would.
No, it was, my favorite part is Alex gets up on stage and he does this big monologue and he goes, fuck meetings. He's like, I don't do meetings. He's like, I do deep work. And everyone's like, yeah, Alex, yeah, I'm going to cancel my Google Calendar right now. I'm texting my EA. And then I was just like, hold on a second. I was like, there's got to be more to this. And then you come up and you just like look at him and you're like, dude, like, he doesn't do meetings because I do the meetings. And if you don't have me, you can't do that. And I thought that was so cool. And I actually asked you a question. You said something interesting there about doing the unscalable things.
Yeah.
And that's, I think it was like a Peter Thiel quote or something where he talked about doing the unscalable to scale. And I asked you the question when we were doing like the mic toss around.
Yeah.
I said, how do you scale responsibly? And I was like, just because you can scale doesn't mean you necessarily should to the capacity that you can. Yeah. And you said, hey, you have to, it's like, when you're scaling, the way to maintain your culture is by doing the repeatable, like the non-scalable actions over and over and over again. And maybe it's not you doing them as much anymore, but it's your team doing them. So can you talk about the importance of identifying like the non-scalable shit and the importance of doing it and building a culture where your team does that by default?
Yeah, I think that it's not that anything is unscalable. It's that you don't know how to scale something. Mm-hmm. And so I think for a lot of people, they see something that in a business and they say, oh, that's not scalable. But it actually means you don't have the skill of scaling. And what scaling is it's, in my opinion, like how I would define scaling a company is being able to take something, pass it off to somebody else, and it doesn't drop in terms of quality, meaning you maintain KPI. If I want to scale sales and I'm the founder and I'm doing sales and I'm closing at 80%, scaling sales means I pass off closing to somebody and they maintain 80%. That is what I think somebody who is very good at scaling is able to do. And in my opinion, what that all leads back to is they're very good at teaching. And so if you want to be good at scaling your business, you get good at teaching people how to do things. I think part of that is assessing what type of people you need in your business and what base level skills that they need to have, because you cannot teach those skills. And the other side of it is knowing how to convey information to somebody. The easiest way to scale your business is to lead by example, right? And so for me, getting in and doing everything first has been the number one like fail-safe way of me scaling my business. So for example, when we started those workshops, okay, let's think back. Who decided on the catering? Who built out the templates? Who decided what the lighting looked like, what the state, like all of those things were me. Just because I have a team and money and success, like I know how to do it right, which means that I go in and I do it to show everybody what right looks like.
Set the standard.
Yeah, I set the standard. And then even so, it's not that I just disappear. Like I think a lot of people think as I scale my business, that means that like when I hand something off, it's like, no, you do it. It's like, no, that's abdication rather than delegation. Abdication is when you just give somebody something and you're like, now you know how to do it, right? You watched me once,
Guilty.
Right? And then you're like, peace the fuck out. Whereas delegation is that you give it to somebody and then you continue to give them feedback about how they can continue to do it well, or reinforce them on why they're doing it well and how they keep doing it well, or you give them feedback on how to get better. It's like you don't ever, I'm like, you just get better at rewarding people, watching people, remembering. Like I know so much of what everyone's doing and I'm constantly rewarding them for those things. I think that's where most people drop the ball in scaling, is like they give it away to somebody, they forget that they ever gave it away. They don't tell them they're doing a good job when they're doing a good job. And then eventually that thing starts to decline. I can pretty much point to any area of the business, and if I don't pay attention to it or give it what it needs, it starts to decline.
Oh, my soul hurts, Leila. My soul hurts.
Why?
Because you're talking to me right now. Like,
Are you advocating?
Yes, I was advocating my ass off. Like, what are you talking about? And you think in the beginning that it's delegation. You're like, oh, delegate. Yeah, delegate, elevate. Okay, cool. Copywriting or like content. Like, here's my social media. Have fun. You're like, wait a second, why aren't you doing things the way that I want them to be done? And then now you're pissed off, and now you're like, okay, what's going on? You mentioned something in one of your videos that I really found interesting. So it was the act of you doing like the goodie bags or like the gift bags from when people are like crushing it, but also when really terrible things happen for employees, and the importance of like you leading by example and you stuffing the bags, you doing the stuff first. And then because your team sees you doing that, it's not just an SOP that you set out. It's you saying, okay, I'm physically setting the standard. Does that apply? Can you think of any stories to share to kind of reinforce that?
Oh man, dude, like I've done everything first.
Yeah.
I mean, like even like you came to one of the first workshops, like I showed up on stage, and to about 5 or 6 hours of the workshop in the beginning, And now I've scaled back to like, showing up at like 2. And there's a level of like, okay, I'm not going to scale back anymore. But like, I learned how to do all the presentations, also built the presentations, taught people how to build the presentations, with our portfolio companies, in terms of like teaching. God, it's like, when you ask me this question, it's hard because I'm like, what haven't I done first?
It's so much. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I absolutely will do the hard things first anyway. Even teaching somebody how to sell something, like I will go sell it first. You know what I mean? Because I think that it's like, if you want to be a leader, I think rather than looking at yourself as a leader, you are a model. You are the model for everybody else. And so you have to go first. It's not like you have to be 10 steps ahead, but you have to be at least 2 steps ahead of people to show them what we're going to do. Even like the first few portfolio companies we brought on, I mean, like I took calls with random people. So like literally, like we didn't have to show somebody how I wanted them to do them. I took calls with people who said they were interested in having us invest. This is when we're getting 20,000 people a month saying they want to be, and I'm getting on the phone. I had a stacked calendar. I'm getting on calls with them, and I'm teaching people how to filter for the companies, right? And then when we get to the point of like, okay, now we're going to do a deal, I'm helping negotiate the deal, and I'm leading through the negotiation and the lawyer process and all that, because I want people to know how we negotiate a deal. So like, there's not anything I don't think that I haven't done. Besides, I will say I'm not great with tech. So like I haven't set up my HubSpot account, but the important things that go into the business that are, I would say, like tipping points, I will always do those things first, because I think that's what great founders do.
So I think that's the missing link that people don't pay attention to, is they just make the SOP first and they just give it to the team. And like what you said, what was the other word? Abdication?
Well, this is it, is you want to demonstrate, document, delegate. You demonstrate to people what needs to be done by doing it your fucking self. Get your hands dirty. Then you have them document what you just did. It's important because a lot of people, what they do is they demonstrate and then they make the SOP of what they just did. What you want to demonstrate and have your team make the SOP or the process showing what they learned from what they watched you do. And then you say, great, now you follow that SOP or that process, and I'm going to watch you do it. And that is delegation. Delegation is when you say, now I want you to demonstrate to me how you would do it by following the process that you documented when you watched me.
Money.
And it's not that you give it to them and then it disappears. You give it to them and then you watch. You know what I mean? So for example, with any presentation that we hand off in the workshop, so I have a live feed in a room where I can watch them. So the last 4 workshops, I've watched every presentation because we had people trying different presentations.
Sure.
And then I would give them feedback. Here's the one thing I would do differently. That's it. Because I also think this, which is like when you delegate something, a lot of people, it's easy to point out 100 things somebody does wrong. But it's very hard to discern what is the one thing that if they did that one thing, it makes everything else better. It's like when we taught the theory of constraints at the workshop, it's the theory of constraints within skills, which is just like, what's the one thing if this person focused on would make everything else better? It might be tonality. It might be using your body on stage. It might be just not being so anxious, which in that case, I would never tell someone not to be anxious. I would instead distract them.
Yo, chill.
Yeah, that doesn't work too well. So I don't know where, like, I think it might be with like social media and the internet and like glamorizing what it means to grow business. Like, here's the thing. If people watch my content, I think that they would know by now that I do not strive to have a lifestyle business. I strive to have a big business that makes a big impact and is very successful and something that is remembered for beyond me, right? So I will say this as the caveat, which is like, if you want a lifestyle business, I do think you can get by abdicating and having like a shitty business, which is fine. You can have a shitty business that makes money. That's absolutely true. But if you want to build something really great, it's going to take discretionary effort, which means every day I'm thinking about, what is it that I talked about with Frank or Neil or Ben or Rocky yesterday? Okay, do I need to follow up with them? Should I reward them? Did they do that well? That meeting earlier, did so-and-so, they told me they wanted to be more direct in meetings. This person told me they wanted to speak up more in meetings. This person, should I reinforce them for doing that? Should I send them a message? Like, all my energy goes towards those things. And I think that a lot of people just underestimate. It's just, it's this fallacy that like, you get this business and you're like, I'm going to have the people do it for me. Nobody wants to do shit for somebody who's fucking lazy. And so like, I look at it and I'm like, I am the example of how hard we work here. And if I look at my team and say that they're not working hard, it's probably me. But a lot of people don't want to face the person in the mirror and think, oh, I am the reason that everyone on my team sucks. You know, but it's like you look at a kid and it's like you can almost always point back to the parent. You know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, like winners will win no matter what. And I do think we have a ton of winners on this team. But winners don't always want to win if they're working for a loser. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So a big question I have, especially on that, when you're like, okay, cool, you need to do the thing first, demonstrate before you delegate, right? How do you keep your personal development and like you, Leila, growing faster than the business, if that makes sense? Because then it comes up to where you're like, holy shit, I don't know how to do this. So like, how can I demonstrate something that I don't yet know how to do personally? And especially with the rate of growth that you guys have, how do you stay ahead of that?
I don't think that you need to be super far ahead of
just a few steps.
Something. Yeah, just a few steps. But I think it's more of, so how do you demonstrate something you haven't done yet? Right? Why would I delegate something that I don't know how to do and my team doesn't know how to do? That's actually what's flawed with that question. Because I'm thinking here, I'm like, if nobody in the company knows how to do it, and it's very important to what we're doing, I need to go learn it first. And I need to do it for long enough that I know what good looks like. So, for example, you know, again, for a founder who's building a business, they have a new product, and they're like, great, I'm going to hire somebody to sell it. Fuck that. If you really want to make it work, you will find out how to sell it first. You will get in there, and you will sell it for 2 or 3 months yourself. You will figure out what a good close rate looks like, a good show rate, a good follow-up rate, all these other things. And then once you know it like the back of your hand, you pass it off. But I think the issue is this, which is like most people try to figure something out just enough to hand it off to somebody. I don't try to rush that process. So like right now, for example, I'm CEO of the company. I'm also basically operating as COO because I don't have anybody who's at that level right now or in that seat. And I'm also CEO of workshops. We've had workshops for almost a year now. And every quarter, people are like, Leila, you have so much on your plate. Like, should you bring in an op? I'm like, I don't know it well enough yet.
Wow.
And it's not that I don't know it well enough to the degree of like, oh, I don't know what's going on or what makes it successful. It's that it's in a point of flux where I could say I will delegate it to somebody to gain back personal comfort that I would like to have. Absolutely. I would like more time. I would like more time to do things outside of work. Yes, I'm a human as well. I like to work out, spend time with my husband, travel, etc. But do I think that's the best decision for this team right now? No. Because we have all these new people coming in. What if I change the one new person up here too? So I have all this new layer, and then amongst all this change of this new person, I put in a new person up here. What do I think is going to happen? I have this saying I say, which is never two news. I need an old and a new, never two news with each other, because then it's like two people don't know what the fuck they're doing. It's like, I joke about it. I'm like, it's like when you're a teenager, it's your first time and everyone's like, where's it go? It's kind of like that. It's like, nobody knows what they're doing and it's like a fucking disaster.
Can't wait for my team to listen.
Yeah. So I just think, that's why I think that the main thing is like, if it's not for everybody to grow a big business and to do it in the way that I do it, because I know it's very uncomfortable. You know, I was thinking about this morning, I made a podcast and I was like, this shit's fucking hard. You know, like I absolutely would like to have more days where I could just do other things I want to do. I would like more time to ideate and think. And, you know, I feel like my content hasn't been as good lately because I don't have as much free time to think about what I put out there, right? There's a lot of things I would like, but my long-term goals are more important to me than the short-term comfort of getting relief right now. And if I know that is better for the business, that I remain in the seat, I will remain there. Because guess what? What's going to happen in 6 months or 12 months is I'm going to have a leader who's in a seat and they're going to say, you know what, I want to delegate, I want to bring someone to do this. And I'm going to have to say, you know, do you remember when for 18 months I was the CEO of workshops? And I did it despite feeling very uncomfortable and feeling stretched thin because it was the right thing for the business. And the right thing for you right now is to remain in the seat you're in for longer because we don't have this nailed yet. We always say like nail it before you scale it. Somebody has to be in charge to say like, we have nailed it, now we can scale it. And I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, no, I don't feel like I'm there yet. And I just think a lot of people, in terms of personal development, I develop myself by understanding that a lot of the things that will get to me to where I want to go require me to be uncomfortable in the short term. And you find ways to make it easy to remain in that discomfort and to normalize it and to be able to associate it with achieving your goals rather than not. But it is absolutely uncomfortable.
Yeah, fuck your mood, follow the plan.
Yeah.
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 I love it. Now you got even merch with it. I was like, okay, cool. Now she's going all
merch.
exclusive merch.
Yeah. No, the media team was like, dude, we gotta make this into merch. And I was like, okay, we will for the team.
That's freaking awesome. So like, I love that you give that because that's a super unique perspective and it's actually the opposite of what I think that you would feel. Because like when you look at Bezos and how he hires, he talks about, okay, every single hire is like better or new. And it's like, I don't know how to do something. So you go hire the person that knows how to do the thing. And so, but what you were talking about recently in a podcast is you were saying that you would rather hire for culture over resume. And you would rather take the person that's more of a generalist that's a sick culture fit, and you would want to train them on something that you've already done. So, I mean, would you agree with that? I mean, so that's the strategy right now, because from what I've heard before, it was like, hey, no, if you don't know how to do something, you go hire that person to like come do it. You're saying that's not the correct way.
There's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's not black and white. Bezos has hundreds of thousands have people on his team. Like, he can't train 1,000 people at a time.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure when I get there, I'm like, dude, we're not training 2,000 people. You know, maybe unboxing the boxes to send to people's houses, but not on these other things, right? And so there's different points in time, and I think it's not a binary. Here's the thing. I have noticed this over-indexation, especially by having the workshops on, I hire somebody that's done it before, right? And they'll fix all my problems and everything will go away and it'll all be better, right? And it's just, I've just seen it time and time again work against people. It's not that you only hire people that are experienced or you only hire people that are inexperienced but a great culture fit. It's that you need a good ratio. And you need to understand what you're capable of teaching somebody versus not. So I will say it like this. If I know how to teach something, then I likely will hire somebody who has a little less experience, is a fantastic culture fit, because I know I can teach them, right? And so it's like, I have the ability to teach this person the skill, great. If I do not have the ability to teach that skill, right, and I do not have the time to acquire the ability, or it's not worth my time to acquire the ability to teach it, like, you know, an IT specialist, right? Then I will say, okay, I'm still hiring for culture, but I'm going to probably have to hire somebody who has more experience, which means I am going to have to course correct them more than I would with this person. This person has learned habits that might work against me in some ways. This person has no habits. And instead I just need to, basically it's like an empty vessel that I have to tell them what direction to go. And so it's like, there's pros and cons to both sides. It's just a matter of, most people don't stop to think, can I teach this role or can I not teach this role? To what degree can I teach this role? And I think a lot of the times what happens is that entrepreneurs abdicate responsibility by saying, oh, I didn't know how to do it, so I hired this guy and he fucked everything up. It's like, okay, well, you could also, you know, spend an hour on Google learning what an IT specialist does. You know, a lot of people don't even do that much. They just hire somebody who's like flying blind. And so I do not advocate for that. And I would say that, like, you know, listening to Bezos talk about like hiring the people who've done it before, he probably also has a whole team of people who are like filtering very heavily to make sure that he has the right person. And he has the ability to attract people like talent to that company that probably are a 10 out of 10 culture fit and a 10 out of 10 skill set. So it's like, you know, I'm talking to people who don't have an Amazon brand. I also don't have the brand of Amazon. I have a good brand and it definitely helps with attracting talent. But like, most people don't have either of those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's not binary. It's a spectrum. And like, I completely get what you're saying. That helps so much. Like, you even saying this right now, it's like, it's not even for the content. Like, it helps me in my business because I'm guilty of everything that you're saying. And I love that and that's something that Alex says about you is like how much you can hear something one time and immediately integrate it. Like, that's how I operate. And so like you telling me this, I'm like, okay, cool. I can go back to my team and I can do it. I want to break the internet with you real quick. Is that cool? You in?
Sure.
Yeah, might as well.
Yeah.
So, Leila, I'm just going to buy a business and hire an operator, of course. And I'm going to be completely passive. I'm going to sit around and do nothing. I'm just going to build up this giant holdco, just hiring operators. You know, what would you say to that?
You're just trying to trigger me. Yeah. Listen, I don't talk about how to buy businesses, how private equity works, all those things for a reason, which is I think most people have this weird illusion it's the easy button. Yeah. You know, I know people who have some of the biggest funds in the world, and they will tell you it is hard. Yeah. You know, building a business is hard. Buying a business is hard. Thinking that either one of those is easy is asinine, in my opinion. Like, neither one is easy. So I think that there are elements to each that could be easier based on your skill set. You know, like, I think everyone has to be able to take a look in the mirror and say, like, what am I good at? what does my skill set align with? For some people, buying a business would be better. Like it would appeal to their natural preferences more, right? Sure. Versus building a business might, like appeal to somebody's preferences more. So I don't think either is right or wrong. I think that both are just like glamorized. Like I think it's just like everything right now is made into be this overly glamorous thing. And I feel bad that that exists because I think it sets a lot of people up for a very unhappy life, whether they build a business or buy a business, because then they think, what's wrong? Why does this feel so bad when people told me it would be so good? And I just really feel like that was the root of a lot of the pain that I had when I was growing our businesses, was people made it look really sexy. And come to find out, when I talk to people who like actually have built really big businesses when I was along the way, it's not. It's a struggle, but it's worth it if you do it, because it builds you into somebody that has unwavering confidence that nobody can take that away from you once you've built it. And, so in terms of, can you just get an operator to put it to a business? You would have to be somebody who could attract the type of operator who could operate without little input. So my question would be like, do you have a brand? Do you have a reason that a great operator would want to work for you or in the business that you bought? Because if you buy a shitty business, a great operator won't go into that shitty business. I can guarantee you that. And then if you hire a shitty operator for a shitty business, that works. But then you have to really manage that person and put a lot of contingencies in place. And so it is active management. I think the funniest fallacy of all time is that, investments are passive. And there are some that are. But I do not believe that a lot of them are if you are the one that is purchasing them, right? Like you're the GP. I'll give you an example. I had a friend who said, not a friend, but I had somebody who said, like,
brutal.
Yeah, sorry.
Random guy.
Yeah, they don't know who they are. And she said, like, dude, you should get into real estate. It's passive. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, really? And then she was like, yeah, come over here. It's my real estate team. And I walked in this room full of 40 people. And I was like, passive? She was like, yeah, well, it's not like we're like in there running, like we have a management company we work with, but like we're buying the deals and flying out and I'm like, so you're working. Okay.
Where's the passive part?
I was like, where's the passive part? You have a team of 40. Like, what the fuck? I know what it feels like to run a team of 40. It's no joke. So like, yeah. I just think like you're gonna have to work in some capacity if you want to make fucking money. Mm-hmm. The question is, what capacity do you want to work? Now, I do think that if you buy businesses that are have low key man risk, which means they are easy to run and easy to operate, like the laundromats, the convenience stores, those kinds, which I have no interest in buying, but a lot of people do. Those would be easier because it does not, like if that person disappears, you could just kind of replace them with anybody else who has like general management skills. The shitty part is managing those people, which a lot of people who have those portfolios don't talk about. But like managing a group of operators at that level is a fucking pain in the ass. So yeah, I don't know, trade-offs. You know what I mean? Like yeah. we have really great operators in our companies. I would say not a pain in the ass, but the difference is like when you manage a group of people who are of lesser skill, it's a lot more hands-on management. Whereas when you manage a group of people who have higher EQ, higher skills, it is not as much hands-on management, but it is emotionally taxing because they have the ability to influence you. They are constantly arguing to you why they think that we should do things. And you're like, should we do that? I don't know. Now I feel like I'm mind fucked. Like they have different skills that also require management. And so I think it's just kind of like pick your poison.
Yeah. Speaking of picking your poison, I'm always like the question I'm most curious about is culture, because like that is you. Like you build the culture of acquisition, you built the culture of Gym Launch, of Allen, of everything that you've been building. And I'm curious, what's the difference between building culture and is one easier than the other? The question is probably it depends. The answer is probably it depends. Of building a team from scratch, like acquisition.com holdco team, versus buying it like a portfolio company and absorbing them into the brand, and now you have to like teach them your culture. I always figured that would be like the most difficult part of your job. I'm curious about your perspective on how you do that.
Yeah, you're not the first person to ask me that. I don't try to make them into acquisition.com.
Okay.
Because I almost look at it like a parent with a kid. It's like, I want you to be me. What kid wants to be their dad? like really, or their mom. And so most people want to work with us because they like elements of acquisition.com, but my job is not to turn them into acquisition.com and acquisition.com's culture. It's to help them find their own.
Wow. Okay.
And so it's not so much I'm trying to assimilate them into our culture because we're not merging companies. They're just under one holdco. It's how do I help them create a great culture in a way that's authentic to them? And that I think you do by teaching them how to be great leaders in a way that, again, is authentic to them. It looks different in every type of person. And so I've never tried to get somebody to be me. I only share, hey, this is what worked for me. This is what didn't work for me. It might be different for you. I absolutely lead with my back foot. Like I lead through influence, not through authority. There have been seldom situations where I have led with authority, maybe like twice when I was like, that is, I don't know if you know, but that is like borderline, makes no sense with our taxes or whatever it might be, right? And so I think, again, I try to model to them what good looks like with our company, with our team. I introduce them to more people from our team. The more they work with people from our team, they see how I work through situations with my team when I have to give them feedback or whatever it might be. They learn by assimilating that. But I've never tried to turn them into the culture that we have here. And I think that would be a losing strategy.
Sounds like the recurring theme is get better. Like you, like as the CEO, like just get better. Stop looking for all the tips and tricks and hacks. Like you need to get better. Correct?
Yeah. I mean, even
I feel heard.
even if somebody, became an acquisition.com company.
Yeah.
Where's the silver bullet? Like now that you're in close proximity to me, you think I'm just going to fix everything?
1,000 golden BBs.
Yeah, it's 1,000 golden BBs. And so it's just like, now you have more insight. Now you see more things. You might actually feel depressed and realize, it is just as hard with them here. If not harder, because I see the discrepancy of where we could be. It's just, yeah. So I think building culture from ground up, bar none, easier. I mean, that's why a lot of mergers, I don't do mergers. I don't want to do mergers. Like that's why a lot of them fail is I don't even think that cultures merge. I think that one eats the other. So it's like whatever the dominant culture is will assimilate the other culture, which is I think how business mergers really work rather than like, we come together and get the best of both. I don't think so. It's like whatever the more powerful culture is will dominate the other one. But yeah, I mean, building it is far easier. It's funny because it's like, it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, but it's easier than changing a culture. Because I will say, like, when I built Gym Launch, I was 23, and we did things super quickly. And it went from me having never managed a person before to having hundreds of employees at the age of 24. And within 4 or 5 years of owning that company, I quickly realized, wow, I wish I had known some of these things before. I wish I could do these things to change my culture. And I tried, but it felt like trying to mend a relationship at times where it's like the girl like cheats on the guy and then it's like they try to get back together, but you always remember that you cheated.
I could change them.
Yeah, it felt like I had made mistakes and I had done things in a way that people wouldn't forget. And so to then try and change that was very difficult. Now, it was accomplished and the culture has changed and it has continued to change, but it was a lot harder. And by the end of the time we sold it, I felt like it was almost like I was a mismatch to the culture in the sense of I had outgrown it and I had not, it was like I grew like this and the culture changes like this. And so it's like, but I kept growing like this. And so it's like, it just was lagging at all points in time. And so when we started acquisition.com, I was really happy to see how much more aligned I was with the culture. And I also realized what it takes, I think, to continue being aligned with the culture, which is instilling a culture of learning and growth. And I think that has been our number one focus. That's my number one focus because my theory is, well, if I instill that as like, that's our number one is the growth. Everyone comes here for growth. Then I can, as I level up, everyone else levels up, which then levels up the entire culture. Whereas with Gym Launch, I didn't lead with growth as our value proposition. I didn't know what to lead with. I didn't lead with anything. I was just like, I'll pay you money, come work.
Let's make money.
Yeah. And now that I know what that is, I feel a lot more confident in building the culture here. And it's been a lot easier to that degree because we're all on the same page,
Mm-hmm. Speaking of culture, you guys lead with your culture in a really interesting way. And it's something that I'm trying to integrate in our business, which is praise over punishment. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I think it's a lot of the times when we want to change someone's behavior, traditional management leans towards punishing people for what we don't want to see.
Guilty.
So you don't close a sale. What happened? Why'd you have a bad day? dude, we got to get back on the phones tomorrow and I need you to hit 5, okay? You know, don't say that again to Sally. Cut this out. Basically, you just tell people what not to do. But when you tell people what not to do, the consequences, 2 things. 1, immediately they will adhere to whatever you said because they're kind of scared. So that's a benefit. But the other thing is that now they're dwelling on that mistake they made, or they're dwelling on the thing that they did in the past, and that robs them of the ability to move forward with power into whatever the solution is. And so that is punishment. Whereas praise is, I am finding, even within that call that guy did, right, the sales call, I'm finding the 2 things that he did really well, right? I'm looking for the positive. And then I'm saying, you know that part where you said this? And they're like, yeah. It's like, that's it. That's the tonality. If we get that tonality through the whole call, you're going to hit 80% the rest of the week. But it takes the person who's praising discipline to look for the positive. And I think that has been something that I have always naturally done because I have always seen the potential in people. I think that's what makes me, that's why I like leadership, is like you can see that thread of potential and you can pull it and then you can turn it into a sweater. That was so lame.
You're like, look at this sweater of potential.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you put fuck your mood on it.
Yeah. But I think it comes from the fundamental belief that like, I just really believe that anybody can achieve anything. And I think I consider myself an example of that because I do not think that I was born or grew up having a lot of intelligence. I don't think that I was super talented at much. Like, I think I was just kind of mid. And I think that I had one thing, which is just, I had the belief that I could learn anything. And my dad instilled that in me really early. And so I try to instill that in the people in our team. And because of that, I think it creates that culture of the praise over punishment because people understand that they can learn. And they all here believe that if you're not good at something, you just lack a skill. It doesn't mean anything about you as a person. But I think that it's been something I've practiced for a long time. I didn't really have the verbiage to describe it until the last 18 months. And I'll be honest, I think just like a lot of the culture stuff in general, you asked me about the questions here, but I didn't want to talk about any of that stuff because I didn't think anyone wanted to listen. But it does feel like there's this weird flux point that we're at right now where people are sick of like the BS, like, oh, it's just all marketing and sales and money. And they're realizing that there's so much more to building a really great business than that. And I think for a long time, I just didn't believe anyone wanted to hear about it. So I didn't want to talk about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you want to make content with whatever's relevant. You're like, okay, cool. Like, what do you actually want to hear? That's what we're going to talk about. Yeah. But I mean, it's just difficult. So like for me, like coming like years back from you, it's just like I've got a team of 6, a core team of 6, an extended team of 12, and I look at all these different management books, and there's fucking thousands of them. I'm like, and they each tell me a different way to do things.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, which one do I read? I don't want to read like 1,000 books. I want to read one book 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, which one is the one? Can you talk about The Motive by Patrick Lencioni?
Yeah. That's a great book for someone to read if they're an asshole.
Yeah, I read it. I related.
You're an asshole?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we go through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I read it because Alex recommended it, and he was like, my wife was like beating me over the head with this book. Leila kept telling me to read this book, and I wouldn't read it. And so I'm kind of curious about your level of satisfaction when you finally read it, and kind of what transpired after.
It was really cool. You know, I had read all of Patrick's books, and that one was actually probably, I can say this because I know it's probably the least seller for him. It was like my least favorite, but it was also the most important one that I read because when I read it, I said, I think if I hand this to Alex, he will see things that he hasn't seen before or see it in a way that I have not articulated well, right? And he read it, and then he looked up at me, and the first thing he said is he was like, you're right. And I was like, what? And he was like, you know, for years you've been saying people is strategy, culture is strategy. He's like, and I've been like, that's bullshit. He's like, you're right. He's like, and I'm that guy in this book. And I was like, wow. And then he was like, I will change. And then from that day forward, I think he just had a newfound respect for teams and people and like what that can do in terms of how it propels your business forward. So it was really cool. And I'm grateful for that book for that reason. And so I think for anybody who identifies as a leader who doesn't like people, doesn't think they're important, it's a good book to read.
Yeah. When I read it, I realized that the guy in the book was focusing on all the things that he just enjoyed, but like not the things that he actually needed to do.
Yeah.
And it was abdication versus delegation once again.
Yeah.
And it just keeps coming up over and over and over again. So I'm kind of curious, like now you were talking about content, and I want to pull on that thread a little bit.
Yeah.
You did a video that I really, really respected where you were like, when I posted content in the very beginning, I wasn't me. I was putting on this mask of who I thought people wanted to see of me.
Yeah.
And people were talking shit. And then I decided, fuck that, I'm gonna make content like me. And guess what? People are still talking shit. So why would I not just make more content like me? Yeah. And there's so many people that are watching this right now that are like, I want to make content, and they just feel like, what face should I put on for this? What's some advice that you can give to them on that front? That was a good one.
I mean, I feel like you gave the advice right there, which is like, people are going to fucking hate you no matter what. So you might as well get hated for who you are. You know, I think that in the beginning, for me, whenever you put yourself out somewhere, you anticipate all the bad things that could happen, right? But it's the stuff that you don't anticipate that really bugs you. And I think for a long time, I let a lot of things get to me in the comments, and when I saw articles get written and things get blasted on the internet, and it felt like I took it really personally. And what I realized is that if you like really zoom out, right? One, anything that bothers you that other people say probably has some truth to it. There's something that you agree with. And I think in anything that bothered me, I just accepted that there's truth there. And I think I resisted it for a really long time. And then once I accepted it, I was like, oh, that feels a lot better, right? Because I'm just like, yeah, I can see that. Okay. I can see why you would say that as a person. I get it. And then I would say the second piece is understanding what price you're willing to pay for the success or the impact you want to have. And if the price that I have to pay to have the impact I want is that people hate me, then I guess I have to pay that price. Like, you can't have the upside without the downside. So I think what I stopped doing was I stopped avoiding looking at all the negative. I started actually reading it. Sounds so fucked up.
Happy Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, I really thought of it like exposure therapy. I was like, okay, the more you avoid something, the more it scares you and it makes you anxious. And so I was like, I'm going to read everything. I'm going to Google my name. I'm going to watch everything. And it was really interesting because, like, in doing that process, it also just completely took away any emotional, like, arousal that I got when I would see negative press, negative comments or whatever. And now it's like, I don't want to be like, I feel nothing, but there's like pretty much nothing that anyone can say about me or write on an ad or anything that will bother me. Like, it's actually, I'm like, is it working right? Like, I'm like, wow, because I stopped avoiding it. I acknowledged that there are things that people say, the ones that triggered me were because part of it might've been true. Right. And then I stopped trying to change people's minds. Like, I stopped trying to change people's minds. And I stopped trying to be perfect. Like, when I started making content, like, just being really honest here, I'm like, dude, I'm not, like, I'm kind of fucking weird. Like, I am fucking obsessed with business. Like, to the point where, like, we would be at a dinner. This isn't like a show. Like, we'd be at a dinner. It's like me and Alex and a business guy and his wife. And it's like, I have anxiety because she's talking to me about something and I'm trying to listen over here because this is all I give a fuck about. And I'm like, this girl thinks I care about fucking lip gloss. What the fuck? And so it's like, I felt like that was like the 7 years of running Gym Launch together. It was a constant battle there, which was like, people think because I am a woman and I wear clothes and don't look like a fucking suit or whatever, that I have all this interest over here, right? When in reality, like, I'm obsessed with business. Like, I really am. It's what I think about all the fucking time. And I'm obsessed with business because I'm obsessed with people and leadership. And so it is all that I want to think about because I really enjoy it and it's made my life better. And then I look at myself objectively and I'm like, okay, I have a really deep, raspy voice. I make really weird facial expressions. And I'm also married to a guy who's been on the internet way longer than me and that people know of and they don't know who the fuck I am. And so I'm like, there's so many things that could come out of this making content. And once I put myself out there, I saw all of that come out. I was like, oh, wow, you see all the parts of yourself that your brain wants to pretend don't exist. You know what I mean? You see when you make a weird facial expression. You see when you say something funny. You see when you don't show up well. You read the comments, you fucking gold digger, and you're like, Jesus, does it seem like that? I guess so, it does. Right? You hear like, your voice sounds like, are you fucking man? You on testosterone? What is it? And you're like, good God, I know it's deep and raspy, but like all these things come out. And I used to just try and be like, how do I change people's minds? And it was just like, one day I was just like, oh my God, there's no peace there. Like every time that I've been able to grow as a person, it's because I've not grown because I've like had to fight something. I've grown because I've had to accept something. And I accepted that people will not understand me and that I do not fit in a box. And that is also why I like genuinely love who I am as a person. Like I do. I like who I am. I've worked hard to get here. And if people don't understand that and they misunderstand it, then that's the price I pay to help the people that do. And I don't want to waste my time talking to the people who don't get who I am and who have misinterpretations and misjudgments, because why would I waste my energy trying to change their minds when I could be helping these people over here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I just looked at it as like, what's the point? I'm going to die one day. Do I want to spend my life trying to change people's minds of like what they think of me? You know, are you a gold digger or are you not? Why is your voice so low? Why are you obsessed with business? There's nothing wrong with you. Like, it's just like, are you really happy? I'm just like, oh my God. You know? My team knows that one.
News headline: is Leila Hormozi even happy?
I know.
YouTube
I'm like,
thumbnail?
well, maybe not in that piece of content when I had been recording for 5 hours and I was tired. You know what I mean? So it's just like, what's the point?
Yeah.
I think the question is this, right? I ask people this: what do you want to have happen? Because they're like, I had a guy, for example, like I think he's like 15 million followers, and I don't even have that many. Don't know why he asked me for advice, but he was like, Leila, this thing happened, and now all these people think I did this thing, but I didn't do it. Like, what do I do? And I was like, well, did you say you didn't do it? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, so now what? He's like, well, they don't believe me. And I was like, so? He's like, well, they're saying all these mean things. And I was like, people say mean things about me all the time. You should look at this YouTube video that went up last night. And he was like, I need to change. I need to get them to believe me. I was like, see, that's the difference. I don't need to get them to believe me, because it's hard enough for people to change themselves and their own minds. Think about trying to change the minds of people on the internet who don't give a fuck about you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I would say, like, my advice for anybody is just like, you're going to waste so much time trying to change people's minds who don't even like you and are just looking for someone to attack. Or you're going to waste your time trying to change someone's mind who's already made about you. Maybe they're not even a bad person, but they've just made up their mind. And like, it is what it is. You can't get everyone to like you. And I think it's kind of the same as like being a leader. There's so many times I've had to do things that I know how some people are going to judge me on my team. No matter how transparent I can be, how honest I can be, I know that they're going to judge me. And I have to just be okay being judged for it and know that long term, I'm making the right decision for myself, for my life, for my business. And so I would just give that to anybody who's struggling with that.
Yeah. Well, I think you're fucking sick. So there you go.
Fucking sick.
Yeah, keep that one. Yeah. No.
You guys remember that.
Yeah,
okay?
you guys remember that. Yeah,
I'm
you remember that.
sick.
Yeah, leave comments for Leila. Tell her she's sick. But no, like Dave Ramsey's got that quote where it's like, we buy shit, buy things. Sorry, Dave, power of Christ. We buy things we don't need with money that we don't have to impress people that we don't like, right? Yeah. It's like, who cares? And the reason I brought that up was because like your advice on that, you talked about it recently, but you talked about it before. And, you know, I'm just new to the media game. And now it's like I've got like a smaller following, but like it's getting up in the few hundred thousands. And now I post a video and I'll get a few million views on a video. And I'm like, I'm going to just convince all you guys that I'm not a scam on Instagram. Like, what the fuck is this? Yeah. And I found myself like literally feeling like I was about to get in a fight. You know, I'm like, adrenaline is going over this random stranger's comment. And the realization that I had from like what you said was, I was like, I don't care about those people's opinions. Like, those are the worst people.
Yeah.
They're spending their free time going on the internet to shit on random people that they don't know. Who cares? So anyways, it really helped me. So
that's
thank
cool.
you. So
no,
thank
I'm
you.
glad.
Yeah.
It should.
Like it legitimately, and also what you said there that I want to pull out for people to like just reinforce what you said. There's an element of truth when it triggers you. So like the truth is in the trigger. And then I was just like, oh, I can see how you would say that. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, let me like be cool with that. And I'm like, let's just keep trucking here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's, you know, there'll be a lot of times where like someone comes into my office and they're really worked up about something or they're anxious. And if I pull the thread, it's like, okay, I feel like I am being a bad employee. I feel like I'm being a bad leader. I feel like I'm being a bad spouse. I feel like I'm being a bad friend, right? And because of that, they're angry with themselves because they're not meeting expectations to be good at this thing. And then I say, it sounds like you are being a bad spouse. And they're like, what? And I'm like, and it sounds like you're being a bad leader. And they're like, what? And I'm like, within the context of this situation, not saying forever, not saying all the time, but like we have such a binary perspective on ourselves as humans. So I'll give you an example. I did a podcast and they asked me about my mother, and I made a comment how I don't have a relationship with her anymore, and all these people are like, bad daughter. And I was like, yeah, within that context, maybe I am a bad daughter.
Yeah.
And I was like, but like, does that make me a bad person? Does that make me a bad human forever? Does that make me a bad wife, a bad leader? Like all these other things. I was like, maybe I am a bad daughter sometimes. Maybe I'm also a bad friend sometimes. I cancel plans all the time. I don't text people back for days. Like I would definitely say I can be a bad friend. You know, every once in a while, I'm sure I'm a bad leader.
Yeah.
And like, there's so much judgment we put on ourselves for that. It's insane. And so like a practice that I have is just like one of the, I call it the opposites. It's just like a lot of psychologists use this, but it's just like, there's so much in whatever emotions are, I would say, like controlling us. There's usually so much belief around something being bad. Us. And it's like we put these unrealistic expectations on ourselves, on people around us, and on the world to be good and to be great and to excel and to hit goals and do all these things. But like sometimes we suck and sometimes we are bad. And that's just reality. And like nobody is beyond that. And nobody is to a degree that they have learned to be good at everything at every point in time in every situation. And so I would say like for somebody that's making content, for somebody that's building a business, for somebody like so much of the angst comes from the need of your own, like, it's like needing your own approval by being like, no, I'm good all the time. I'm a good spouse. I'm a good business owner. I'm a good leader. Maybe you're not.
That's okay.
It's okay. Yeah.
Now you know what to work on. That's your constraint.
Right. Or you could not. Your life. You know, I mean, like, I think one of the most freeing things is when people are like, I was talking to somebody the other day and they were like, you know, I feel like since I started my business, I'm a bad friend. I was like, I've been a bad friend for a decade. A fucking decade. I can only keep friends who are as bad of friends as me. Like we talk, send texts, don't respond to texts, play banana phone for months. And then finally like, dude, it's been 3 months. I feel like we just talked yesterday though.
Yeah.
I can only have bad friends because I'm a bad friend.
And then you pick up. And then also it's funny because the context of that shifts because that may be somebody else's perception of being a bad friend. But for you, you're like, oh yeah, this is just like my version of being a good friend.
Yeah.
So it's all like nuance too.
It is.
So I want to be cautious of your time here. So I've got a closing question that actually happened to me, and I think it'd be really interesting to like, because I haven't heard you talk about it.
Okay.
So you know, I am a new business owner. You know, we're 2 years deep, and so I'm learning all this stuff. And so again, like the delegation, like demonstrate and delegate, has already helped me throughout this conversation. I had a new hire that came in, and she was just a freaking rock star. And within the first week, I was planning on launching a new business vertical. And she was just like, I think this is a terrible idea. I was just like, who the fuck do you think you are to tell me like what a terrible idea? Like, you are day 4. And my ego flared up as the business owner. But then I looked at the data and I looked at what she was saying and I simmered with it and I sat with it. And I was just like, you're right. And I respect you for telling the truth. Now, there's always room for candor, but how do you build a culture where people can come to you and tell you stuff that you don't want to hear on your team?
You don't punish them when they do. You thank them. So people tell me bad news all the time. In fact, I don't think many times in my day, somebody messages me or comes in my office to tell me good news. Like for real. Yeah. Like I think being CEO, like people give you the bad news and I want them to give me the bad news because if I don't know where the bodies are buried, how am I going to be able to fix anything? And so when somebody gives me the bad news, I now genuinely, I feel relief. In the past, I would feel rage, frustration, upset, sad, but I trained myself to instead, before I did anything, just sincerely say thank you. Thank you so much for having the courage to tell me that. And I cannot tell you how important that is in business because when you have new leaders, when you have people who have never done what they're doing before, and when they make mistakes, the last thing you want is them to hide them. And so if the question is, what do I want to have happen next? If I want this person to tell me more problems so I can fix them when they're small, again, I thank them and I give them positive feedback. If I want them to never tell me something again, I get angry. And so leaders who get angry at people who tell them about problems are leaders who will not hear about problems after that. And leaders who don't know about problems build businesses based on false premises, which usually fail.
Correct.
And so it's honestly just, it's self-discipline of learning to say thank you. And I genuinely mean it when I say it, because I am so grateful when somebody tells me a problem when it's small, because small problems unattended to become big problems. And so I'm like, thank you for telling me. Thank you for exposing me to that. And I think that is also why it's worked in my favor to be somebody who leads with the praise over punishment, because I get so much more feedback than those who lead with punishment. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you also mentioned that it's a faster reinforcement loop when you do lead with punishment, because it's faster, and it's slower when you lead with praise, but then it's a long-term or macro effect where they're actually maintaining that behavior. That's something that I've really struggled with, because I literally had a team member that's like a close team member to me. I thought things were honky-dory. I was like, oh yeah, we've got a great relationship. Like,
yeah. Of
course. There were so many bodies that were buried that she wasn't telling me, because I would rip her fucking head off whenever she would give me bad news. And so she stopped giving me bad news. She just told me everything was sunshine and rainbows and everything was great. And I was like, oh, our business is awesome. Until one day she was like, no, actually, like, let's talk. And I had to look myself in the mirror, and I had to completely change my management style, to your point. So like I think that is one of the most important points, that if people that are watching this would take that, like, change everything.
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
And I think it's really self-aware of you, because I think when I see somebody who, I think everyone has like a default emotion they go to. Sounds like yours is anger. Mine is anxiety.
Can relate.
It's like when somebody defaults to anger, what I've seen is that what happens is you just get a room full of yes men.
Yeah.
Because they feel defeated giving you the bad news. So then all they do is give you the good news, and they tell you, yeah, you're right. Behind closed doors, they tell everyone else why they think you're wrong. And so it's been something I've seen happen time and time again to like a lot of people. But the thing is that you'll keep doing it because it gives you benefit in some way. So you have to figure out how it benefits you. How does getting angry benefit you?
Not
because
at all.
if it didn't benefit you in some way in the short term, you wouldn't do it. Humans don't do things that don't work for them. We naturally change our behavior. And so there's something that you get from when you're angry that when you're not angry, or when you don't get angry, you don't get. Is it relief? Is it that they shut the fuck up and stop talking to you? Is it, you know what I mean? Like, think about this, right? Women a lot of times will cry to a boyfriend or a man when they want something. They cry because they don't know how to say that they want something. So instead they cry. They emote in some way. Men usually do anger. It might be that a woman's crying and a man gets angry so that the woman stops crying. Because women, when they're scared, usually cry less because they get freaked out. And then they just go into stress mode. So it's like, what is your anger? What happens right after you get angry? What happens next? That's why you get angry. So you just need to figure out how to replace it with something else. But I think it's always good to understand what happens, because like for me, earlier on in my life, there was definitely a lot of times where like getting upset got me something I wanted. And it was because getting upset was the only skill I had to get what I wanted. I didn't have the skill of asking for stuff, you know? And even to this day, the one skill that I've had a really hard time with is asking for help.
Same.
Yeah.
How have you overcome it?
I've gotten way better with my team by reminding myself to ask for help. And I have a little thing on my calendar that says like, what can you delegate? What can you give to someone else? Do I need support? So I put little prompts in place for myself, which helps me a lot. But I think that a lot of the times now I've trained myself into it a lot more. In the beginning, it felt like asking for help meant I was weak. And so I never want to be seen as weak.
Or needy.
Right. But then I realized this, which is asking for help makes my team better. Because when you ask for help, you make the person that you ask feels great. And I think it's just I've had enough times where I've seen that play out where like they feel really good and honored that I've asked them for help. And then they gain skills by helping me that I've seen the benefits long term. And so then it's like, it makes me want to ask for help more because I'm like, I see how this makes other people better.
It literally changed my life. That's actually advice that my aunt gave me because I launched a book and then it was a big deal for me to manually message people and text people and be like, I'm going to exposure, like you were reading the comments. I was like, I'm going to fucking exposure therapy my way out of this. Yeah. Like, I'm going to ask for help. Will you share the book? Will you leave me a 5-star rating and a review on Amazon? And she says, if you don't ask, you are denying and robbing other people of the joy of giving. And I was just like, damn it, Jane. I was like, it was the first time it clicked for me, but same, because you don't want to feel like a burden. Like you provide for everyone else, and you're like, if I ask you to provide for me, that's weak. So I like your last prompt there, where it's like, ask for help and ask for support.
Isn't it funny though? Because when do people feel at their best? When they feel useful.
Yeah. And
asking for help literally creates that feeling for that person. I
freaking love that. I want to be conscious of your time, so I think that's a good time to end it right there. Or unless you want to just keep going for another 2 hours, like fuck it.
I'm sorry, can't, but.
No, it's cool. We can do a round 2. It's fine. Well, thank you so much. This has been absolutely awesome. I'm so glad that you gave me a shot here, and hopefully I lived up to the expectations. And yeah, this has been an awesome time.
I appreciate you preparing and having meaty questions. So thank you.
Thank you. With that, it's been Leila and Brian with the Action Academy Podcast, signing off. Yeah, we got to sign off. Let's go. Awesome. Oh, my God.
Hey.